Hello everyone. So for this lecture, we will be talking about the review of literature and studies. So paano kayo magsusulat ng related literature and studies that is part of your thesis or your action research or your dissertation. Okay? So when we say review of literature, sa thesis natin, ang literature is a review of the literature of the topic. Meaning to say, you will write a review of those available materials, be it in literature or be it in studies that are related to your study. Okay? So when we say review, ang ginagawa natin sa review is we are summarizing the major parts and bringing them together. So, ang ginagawa natin sa review of related literature is we're looking for other researches conducted, articles printed or published published digitally that are related to your study, and we're putting them together for you to build up a picture for other researchers that will be reading your paper to have an idea of what is your study all about. Okay? So, ang ginagawa natin is we're trying to build a picture. We're trying to give a story based from the previous findings of the studies conducted or the available articles or the literature that are supportive or supporting your study. So here, remember that in a different field, there are different ways of writing related literature and studies. And your professor has a different standards on how you are supposed to write with your related literature and study. And of course, what you need to do is to write a straightforward summary of your study so that a deep and analysis and discussion should be floated or will be floated in your chapter 2. Okay? So for the literature, when we say literature, ang literature po is any articles available in the internet or any articles that are published. Ano ang halimbawa ng related literature ninyo? Those articles that are published in printed form such as magazine, portfolios, and similar essays, government reports, books, and so on. So dito, ang tinitingnan lang natin dito is those available news, articles, clippings from those I mentioned na sources. While for the studies, so when we say studies naman, these are, wala kasi siya dito. So, ang studies naman natin are those manuscripts such as thesis, dissertation, scholarly publication that is available. When I say available, meron tayo ngayong repository or digital repository. Meron din naman tayong available repository such as your university library wherein you can generate your related studies. Okay? So when we say related literature, yung findings niya ay kinukuha natin, their theories and principles, and then as well as those that are contained in books, pamphlets, magazines, and periodicals. So ang terms neto ay related sa purpose ng study nyo. And of course, you are using them to give more weight to your study. So meaning to say, kailangan mong i-justify ang study mo. That is why you need to generate more review or you need to review more literature and studies for your study to be considered as needed or need by the society, or there is a problem that needs to be addressed in your study. Okay? So remember, you are evaluating the related literature and study as your secondary sources. When we say secondary sources, those information that comes from the printed material or available materials that are either published or unpublished. Okay? And here, kailangan nyo pong i-organize ang inyong related literature and studies into thematic. When I say thematic, lalabas dyan sa pag nireview nyo na lahat ng available materials, magkakaroon kayo ng groupings. And yung groupings na yon is yung tinatawag nating thematic, wherein this kind of idea floated after you review that kind of article, that kind of news, that kind of essay, or the available material from the National Gazette or the scholarly studies published by other researchers. And of course, you have to synthesize them. So at the end of your chapter 2, you will write a synthesis of reviewed literature and studies, wherein, when we say synthesis, you will give the entire retry of all materials that you reviewed. Okay? So here are the samples, or here are the sources of related literature. The first one is book. So, makita nyo to sa bibliography ng books, wherein ang advantage ng books natin, these are available kasi these are published. And then, good quality material ito kasi the books undergone series of editing and then reviewing so that the information are really correct. Okay? And ang disadvantage ng books natin, some are not up to date. So, nagkaroon na ng ibang revisions yung book, or meron na siyang ibang edition. That is why, probably, kung ginamit mo yung first edition of that book, there are lot of changes that happened. Kasi nagkaroon na ng bagong information. That is why, kung naka 7th edition na, the idea or the information you generated from the first edition is no longer similar to the recent or the current information contained in its recent edition. Okay? And of course, in order for you to search for a book, titingnan mo kung related or relevant yung book na yun. Kung for education yung book, ano ang study mo? Baka IT ka, so hindi siya related. Okay? So, examine the content of the material of the book, and if you found the book relevant to your topic, then you can get it as part of your review. Okay? Second is journal. When we say journal, ano ang halimbawa ng journal natin? So, ang journal natin ang example nito is Modern Teacher. Okay? Ang Modern Teacher is a journal published quarterly in the Philippines. So, yung Modern Teacher is a journal of the submitted entries of several teachers, Filipino teachers. Okay, journal yon. Okay, so you are given an up-to-date information, although nagkakaroon siya ng gap. Kasi may mga journals na once a year lang siya mag-publish, meron namang biennial, so medyo meron siyang gap. And kaparehas ng book, you have to identify the journals related to your study. Okay? And then you can locate the copy of the journal from your in your library if your library is subscribing to this journal. Okay? In some instances also, there are journals available in the internet, kagaya ng mga research journals. But if you generate review from research journals, it is not part of literature, but rather it is part of your related studies. And then you can also generate the index of abstracts to identify the articles in the journal. Okay? Remember that a literature review is a summary of previous researches on a topic. So mag-iingat tayo kasi ang ginagawa ng karamihan, there are available materials ngayon that are very much related to your paper. Ang ginagawa nila, they are copy-pasting everything. So that's considered as plagiarism, and that is a no-no for a researcher to copy materials. So what you need to do is you have to give a summary of previous researches on a topic. Okay? So isa-summarize mo yon. Hindi mo siya kukunin. So kung nakita mo sa bibliography of that particular ni-research mong article na halos related din siya sa'yo, exhaust all means to find that article. Okay? So remember, ang advantage ng review of related literature and studies? So you are looking for possible theories, concepts, or principle to support your investigation. Bakit kailangan mo ng theory, concept, or principle? Those theory, concept, or principle will guide you in how you will conduct your own investigation. Another one is you are given also idea on how you will create a sound research title, hypothesis, and assumption. Pero it's a no-no for you as a researcher to copy everything. Okay? May nakita kang title. Ay, maganda tong title. Pinaltan mo lang ng place. That is also considered as plagiarism. So, bawal na may kaparehas kayong title kasi you are duplicating everything that is inside that. So, kahit hindi mo naman siya kinopya, pero yung title is halos parehas, people would think that your paper is similar to the paper available. Okay? And of course, you are going to be enlightened as a researcher to what will be expected or the direction of your study. And you will prove if the study or the former study is researchable. So, kung parehas ba yung findings nyo or yung study mo is researchable, kasi nakita mo based on your review of related literature that it possesses something na pwedeng i-research. And of course, it will give you an idea if your study is may novelty. When we say novelty, bago. Ang daming related na articles, na published articles, mga literature available, and sa sobrang dami na nila, researches right now are no longer novel ang iba. So wala nang bago. Some are just replicating the findings of the former study, which is not novel anymore. Okay? And of course, you can be given ways on identifying the statistical instrument. So nakita mo dito sa study na to na pwede palang gamitin yung particular na instrument, na statistical treatment or statistical instrument para maka-generate ka ng data, which is good. Okay? And of course, you can use them or those related literature and studies in writing the findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Okay? Again, that is a guide. Do not copy those findings, conclusion, and recommendations stated in your former reviewed study. Kasi again, that is considered as plagiarism. Okay. So, how do you write a literature review? And of course, how do you write also a review of related literature and studies? The first thing is you have to summary everything. Okay? When I say summary, read from the top to last page of the related journal entry, ano pa, related article ngaya published by Manila Inquirer. What else? A news ngaya shown in Philippine TV. Okay. What else? You will summarize them. Bakit? In summarizing the idea or summarizing what is inside the article, you are not going to copy everything that is within the material that you read, kasi once you summarize, it is no longer plagiarized kasi you will be summarizing their ideas using your own thoughts. Okay? And of course, while summarizing, you will explain that the ways on how that research was conducted as you mentioned them in your chapter 2. Okay, you have to point out also the different ways how the researcher have treated the topic. So ilalagay mo, halimbawa, the study of Avila focused on using blank. Okay, using this kind of statistical treatment or statistical instrument. While for our study, may word na while, you're differentiating your study to the study of Avila, saying na your study and his or her study is different, is entirely different. Okay? And you have to point out connection or similarity of your study to the former study. So here, you will give the similarity or connection of your study or of that former study to your study. Okay, halimbawa, Avila 2019 conducted a research on blank. So, the study of Avila is similar to our study ngaya since we are also discovering ways to blah 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 as his primary objective also in his study. So, that is how you will write your connections. And of course, you will explain how the former works fit together. Paano siya naging significant to your study? So, based on your summary ngaya, sabi ni Avila, if we utilize ngaya, kunyari, a 12 hours of using this kind of instructional materials among the students, we can, it says that it can improve the academic performance of the students. That is why you will explain in your study, based on the findings of Avila, you are using this kind of instructional materials since it was proven by Avila that it can be used as blank. Okay? So yung how the previous works fit to your study. And that is the laying of foundation for understanding of your research. Okay? So here are the guides to prepare the review of related literature and study. The first one is you need to visit your library. Kung ang library nyo ay walang mga published or unpublished thesis, copyrighted or uncopyrighted thesis, dissertation, meron ibang school na may library. May digital library din ang university ninyo, kunyari. So, you can generate your own findings from that. Kung walang available na thesis sa mga bookshelves ng library ninyo, baka may book of abstracts. Okay? Ano pa? Meron din kayong proceedings of the research conferences. So, it can be used as your review, as your material. And then, merong mga monograph ngaya ang library ninyo. It can still be used as your sources. Okay, number 2. Siguro is gumagamit pa ang library nyo neto, card catalog for the title of article, books, monograph, or if wala, ask kayo sa librarian. Okay? Next is you can use your index card. Okay, index card is a yes for us, researchers. Kasi as we summarize one idea from, the ideas we generated from one research, or article or yes, literature, ang ginagawa natin is one index card for one material, one source. So, doon ka magsa-summarize. Okay? And later on mo na lang siya i-encode. Ano po? And then, this is the example of how you will organize your materials. Okay? So, alam mo, author, susulat mo si author, book, page, number, year, publisher, place. Bakit kailangan indicated ito? Kasi later on, you will be putting those information, yung mga author, book, page, year, publisher, place, in your references or bibliography. Okay? So, another example. So, in this slide, you refrain daw from copying the entire chapter. So, wag kopyahin lahat. Kasi mapaplagiarize mo yon. Ano po? Right now, merong mga subscription na ang university or colleges ninyo to to applications or digital applications, kung tama ba ako, that can check plagiarism. Example, for the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, meron tayong Turnitin. I-run ng advisor or ng teacher ninyo yung article or yung review ninyo, tapos nakita niya na 99% plagiarized, meaning to say, you copied everything. So that's a no-no. Hindi ka makagraduate. Sa atin, we're allowing less than 15% plagiarism level. So you have to summarize everything. Okay? And you have to acknowledge the sources. Pag sinabi natin acknowledge the sources, kasalanan mo pag hindi mo in-acknowledge yung source niyan kasi you're telling the reader that this phrase lang ngaya, word ngaya are coming from your own thoughts, your own ideas. So you have to acknowledge the sources. And remember, plagiarism is punishable by law. Several students were not able to finish their degree kasi they are found to be plagiarizing or plagiarized their thesis. So that's a no-no. Okay? And you as a researcher is a second party. You're just telling the story conducted by on what happened upon one researcher conducted his study. Okay? So, paano siya gagawin? This is the example according to De La Cruz. De La Cruz averred that. Okay? Pag first paragraph, kung yung study na yon ay first paragraph, pinaka-first paragraph ng isang theme, ang tawag natin doon ay introductory review. So, pinakauna siya. So, siya nag-i-introduce kasi siya may pinaka-bulk of idea. Lalagay nyo siya sa pinakahulihan, yung kanyang apelyido like that. Pero, kung siya ang kung yung sumunod sa kanya, you can start their apelyido or their information sa unahan. Pero kung siya yung pinakauna ng theme na yon, pinakaunang paragraph, ang gagawin nyo is nasa pinakahulihan yung kanyang apelyido. Okay, hulihan ng paragraph. Okay? As a third party, so si De La Cruz, dun sa study niya, nag-cite siya ng isang tao. So, pwede yon. So, paano yon? So, De La Cruz, as De La Cruz cited, Palpalatok in 1999. Third party ka na. Pangatlo ka nang nag-cite. Okay? So, De La Cruz quoted Palpalatok in 1999 who averred that. So, ikaw as a researcher is pangatlo nang nag-cite nun. At ginamit mo yung idea ni De La Cruz. Sir, pwede po ba sir na gamitin namin yung exact na citation ni De La Cruz? No. You have to summarize pa rin it kasi if that material is already published digitally or in the internet, na-publish siya sa scholarly journals, considered as plagiarism ka na rin. Okay, so yan yung example ng third party. So remember, make a related study on the need and relevance of your investigation. Tingnan mo yung research problem, yung hypothesis, yung procedure, yung findings, conclusions, para malaman mo na, ayun, parehas kayo ng pinag-aralan. So, related talaga siya. And this is the example. Okay? So, ganyan siya kadali lang. You will write the problem. Ano yung problem na Dela Cruz? Kunyari, si Dela Cruz is, ang problem niya is, nag-aaral siya, kunyari, ng use of artificial plant in teaching botany concept. So, ang problem niya is, mababa yung concept na mag-aaral about botany. So, properties ngayon ng plant, kunyari. So, ang ginawa niya is, naggamit siya ng mga plastic or artificial plants. So, yun. Ano yung hypothesis ni De La Cruz, procedure, yung ginawa niya, findings, conclusion, and yung comment mo. Siyempre, magko-comment ka based on your findings as well. Based on how your study is related to the study of De La Cruz. And if you wish to combine professional and related studies, you have to do a thematic presentation. When we say thematic presentation, igurupo mo yung parehas na study. Ngayon, ang theme mo, paano mahanap yung thematic na yon? Gamitin mo yung mga keywords na nasa title mo. Okay? And yun na yung automatic na theme. Plus yung mga main ideas or main variables or variables in your statement of the problem or research objectives. Okay, that is a thematic approach. Pinagrurupo mo na siya para madali sa iyong mag-build ng story. Okay? And of course, you make a logical, systematic, and convenient. Pag sinabi nating logical, may pasunod-sunod yung story. Okay? May pasunod-sunod yung pagkaka-review mo. Systematic, organized siya. And convenient, nakikita agad ni researcher na nagbabasa ng study mo or ng thesis mo na natapos na ganito pala yung nangyari. Kasi binuo mo yung story ng mas maayos. Okay? So example, determinants of teaching performance of secondary school English teacher. Ang themes mo is maghahanap ka ng reviews or ng study na i-review or ng mga articles na i-review for the profile of high school teachers, teaching performance of English teachers, multimedia instructional materials, method or strategies and techniques, and competencies of teachers in communication skills, plus work attitude of teacher. Okay? Additional concept. Galing to sa libro ni Ma'am Portus. Sabi dito, ang review of related literature is an activity process. Meaning, ginagawa mo to before ka sanang nagkandak ng nakahanap ng title. Pero kung nauna na yung title, okay lang din naman. Kasi, kung may title ka, naghanap ka ng related studies and literature na related, of course, to your title, saka mo ma-follow or saka na magpa-follow sana yung mga statement of the problems. Okay? Ganun kadali lang mag-formulate ng statement of the problem if you exhaust or if you do extensive review of related literature and studies. And as a researcher, you have to consult the previous researches for you to determine whether your research is still or research idea is still researchable. Okay? Malay ninyo, gusto nyong patunayan na ang Venn diagram pala ay makakatulong in improving the academic performance or reading comprehension, kunyari, of students. Venn diagram is 1960s pa. Ang dami nang nagpatunay, hindi na siya researchable. Okay, hindi pa rin ba ikaw naniniwala sa thousands of studies that focused on Venn diagram? So, may bago ba? So, kung walang bago, wag mo na siyang aralin. Okay? And aside from indicating the relevance, you as a researcher, what type of research has done in your area? So, lalabas mo to sa review of related literature. And then, ano yung nasa previous studies? Suggestions? What has not been investigated? How can the proposed study add your knowledge? Yung theories and research methods. Ito yung hinahanap na natin. Itong nasa slide 21 na ito yung hinahanap natin sa synthesis of the reviewed related literature and studies. And of course, kailangan mo, ang goal mo dito is makakreate ng emerging themes. When we say emerging themes, magkaroon ka ng thematic presentation of every related literature and studies that you reviewed. Okay, and because of that, mas mahaba ang review of related literature than your introduction, than your chapter 1. So, medyo bulky ito. And kadalasan ng plagiarism ay nagsa-start sa review of related literature and studies. Okay? And remember, you are limiting everything. Hindi mo binibigay lahat ng bulky information sa introduction. So, konti lang ilalagay mong mga related literature and studies sa introduction. Kasi kung nilagay mo na lahat ng bulky na review of related literature doon, ang mangyayari ay wala na siyang idea. Ay, binigyan mo na siya ng maraming idea, hindi na siya magbabasa ng chapter 2. You give them a little salt so that they will use ngayapatis later on. Okay? Because of that, RRL is located after the introduction. In Polytechnic University of the Philippines, we're using our related literature and studies in the latter part of chapter 1, which is chapter 2. Okay? So that would be all. Thank you so much for your attention.